This episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast is brought to you with NFU Mutual, offering you tailored farming insurance and a local personal service.
Biodiversity net gain habitat banks are meant to provide good income streams for 30 years for farmers wanting to diversify, and the rug being pulled from under the policy now, well, that is going to squander all of those opportunities. So it's a blow for nature, it's a blow for farmers, it's a blow for the wider countryside, and of course this all adds up to an economic blow as well, and it's really frustrating.
Is the government about to backtrack on plans to pay farmers for creating and improving wildlife habitats? We report from the front line on the battle to save biodiversity net gain. A warning for arable growers looking to use two key fungicides together next spring. Land wars with France, what it means for UK sheep producers, and how Red Tractor plans to streamline assessments and ditch unnecessary farm inspections. Welcome to the Farmers Weekly podcast. I'm Johann.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh. Broom.
And it's straight to our top story. Farmers face a nightmare before Christmas if the government waters down its promises on biodiversity. So says one of Britain's biggest wildlife charities. The Wildlife Trust says the government looks set to weaken biodiversity net gain, which pays farmers who offset environmental damage caused by developers. The BNG scheme is helping farmers transform low-yielding land into wildlife and nature recovery sites, guaranteeing an income for up to 30 years. Wildlife Trust spokesman Matthew Brown says a government announcement expected on 18th of December could kill the scheme by exempting smaller development sites.
We understand that the Treasury has been insisting on a 0.5 hectare exemption for biodiversity net gain, which would effectively gut the scheme. There's some interesting research out from Wildlife and Countryside Link and FTech, the economics consultancy, which suggests that a 0.5 hectare exemption could see over 90% of developments exempt from BNG. That amount of exemption calls into question the entire viability of the scheme, and I'm afraid will highly likely collapse the BNG market. So it's an exemption, but it's a fatal exemption that will leave nature and developers who want to do the right thing for nature much, much worse off.
And what you're saying, Matthew, is that would be bad for biodiversity and bad for farmers.
Absolutely. So to deal with both of those, when it comes to the biodiversity impact, it's important to remember that biodiversity net gain was one of the proposals that came from the Environment Act, which was passed with cross-party support only 4 years ago. It also starts to unpick what was meant to be this combined approach of nature recovery, providing real benefits, commercial benefits, and that includes for farmers. Biodiversity net gain habitat banks are meant to, and in many places they are starting to do this, provide good income streams for 30 years for farmers wanting to diversify. This is what BNG is starting to provide. And the rug being pulled from under the policy now, well, that is going to squander all of those opportunities. So it's a blow for nature, it's a blow for farmers, it's a blow for the wider countryside. And of course, this all adds up to an economic blow as well. And it's really frustrating that these arguments, we've been very clear this is what would happen to the government, and we've been joining with farming colleagues in making that argument, and we just don't get the traction. We're not listened to in the same way that the developer lobby and those developers who are really keen to see environmental protections reduced so they can make a little bit more money by bending the rules, they are listened to. And that is deeply, deeply frustrating that the current government is having a deaf ear to farming and ENGO concerns, which are so often so closely aligned, and is instead saying yes to anything that the developer lobby say. And the consequences of that are going to be felt in our countryside and in our nature-rich areas for a long time to come.
You've described this as a nightmare before Christmas. Just to emphasise, though, it hasn't happened yet. What are you doing to ensure that this nightmare doesn't become reality?
Well, absolutely. A nightmare before Christmas is sadly what we're faced with. They consulted in the summer, and I think we had over 10,000 nature lovers respond to that consultation saying, please don't do this. We've been working with businesses, including farm businesses, to send, I think it's at least 4 different open letters now that have gone into ministers looking at this, saying, please don't do this. This will mean job losses, it will mean economic losses, as well as the nature hit. We've also just been stressing it whenever we've met with DEFRA. I was at a round table with the new Secretary of State, Emma Reynolds, when she was appointed. And, she's asked to go around the room, what's one thing that's really important? Myself and many others around that room said, biodiversity net gain. We have to keep this intact. This is a new, exciting thing for nature. This is not some sort of failed status quo, rusty regulation that's not delivering anymore. This is an exciting thing that can mean that nature recovery comes forward, that development helps deliver nature recovery and provides new income for farmers. She did seem to listen then. I hope that she did listen and that other ministers in other departments have also listened. But we've made it very, very clear to government that if it goes ahead next week, a gutting of BNG, that will be a betrayal of nature, but it will also be a betrayal of the promises that Labour said in the election what they do for nature. They produced a countryside plan in June 2024 as a kind of appendix to their manifesto. It had the same weight as their manifesto. It was clear proposals, including we will not weaken environmental standards, we will deliver development and nature recovery hand in hand. Well, gutting BNG is a complete breach of those promises, and we've been very clear to government that if that is the case next week, A, we won't let them forget it, and B, we will make sure that across the country that's known.
That's Matthew Brown from the Wildlife Trusts. Hugh, a lot of uncertainty around this, but an announcement expected this coming week.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously potentially bad for wildlife. Bear in mind that it could be good for some farmers. If you are a farmer that is seriously invested in BNG because you've found some bits of your farm that you can turn into BNG habitat projects and then you've put them into an environment bank type scenario, it could be bad news for you, particularly if that market sort of goes backwards. However, the flip side is if you're a farmer building a barn on your farm and suddenly they change the exemptions, it could be that suddenly you won't have to pay an ecologist 1,800 quid to do a BNG audit, and then you won't have to plant a load of trees around your new barn, which could cost you another few thousand quid. So, yeah, there are pros and cons here, but clearly what was meant to be a big long-term thing could actually unravel quite quickly.
And Louise, as Hugh says, there could be winners as well as losers here. But if smaller development sites are exempted, farmers who have created BNG features on their farms in the hope of selling them to developers could be left high and dry. Not good.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got it. I mean, there were some early adopters, if that's the right term, and there are others who, they've actually got these units for sale and are busy developing some more to go with that. How many of these people are actually making money from this scheme yet? I don't know. There are costs, considerable establishment costs, and then ongoing costs as well. So, BNG seems to have been rather a long time in the pipeline, doesn't it? And it's definitely already had its ups and downs, and it sounds as though it might have a few more of those.
Well, indeed it might. And BNG has indeed, as you say, had its ups and downs, but it isn't by any means dead in the water yet. And it could provide an important source of income for farmers. We've already lost the basic payment scheme. The sustainable farming incentive is close to new applications. There are question marks too over landscape recovery. We covered that on the podcast last week. We wouldn't want biodiversity net gain to disappear too.
I think look, we're assuming a lot here. We know there's an announcement on the 18th of December. So just to be clear, none of this has actually been laid out in stone, and it may be that in the current government's psychotic grid scenario that is its grid for PR, it may just forget all this and it all goes away. If it doesn't, and if what we think is going to happen is that the lower thresholds are going to sort of go back, or those exemptions, if you were at the lower end of the market, that will have, could potentially have a significant effect on all of these smaller schemes and these banking schemes. So you remember with BNG, most big developments, if you're a big greenfield builder building 500 big houses or 500 houses across farmland, greenfield, you will most definitely incorporate the BNG in. So with BNG, you're building 500 houses. If you took BNG out of that, you might build another 50 because you got land that you haven't turned into BNG. So it would be, the thinking is that carries on as normal, but it's these smaller ones. So basically, since February the 12th last year, 24, anyone that builds over a new development over 25 square meters has to do BNG or has to do a BNG assessment. And they're the ones that want half a credit here or 3 credits there. And they're the ones that would have gone to the Environment Bank type people where they've banked stuff. And that's where farmers are involved. But yes, look, it's not helpful. But equally, there is some farmers, a lot of estates sort of got onto this sort of thing because they could see it as a bit of we don't have to farm the land. It's like stewardship for 25, 30 years. But yes, it's in some hands, it's helpful. I see why they do it for growth. It's a no-brainer because you take some of the restrictions, some of the blockage out the pipe, and you start to get building and stuff picks up and it takes cost out of the system. But then the flip side is that will leave people cross. And the question as well is the people that are in these things now, so presumably they're locked in for 25 years, and those that have waited till perhaps December the 18th will be like, hey, we don't have to pay that bit.
Yeah, the government's saying that it remains determined to turn around the decline in nature and that it will publish its response to its own biodiversity net gain consultation in due course. Louise, it would be seen by many farmers and indeed environmental campaigners as another broken promise if the rug is pulled.
Yeah, if it is pulled. I mean, the thing is, this is private money, isn't it? Private funding coming into farming. And we've talked about this at length. It's something that we desperately need because the public funding is fading away. And, the government's always made a big play about the fact that, yes, well, it'll be both private and public funding. So if you take a chunk of it away, if that's what happens, then there's going to be a lot of questions, I think, that will follow. It's very, very difficult to know which way this one's going to go.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
And now a special word with this week's podcast partner, NFU Mutual, and I'm joined by NFU Mutual's Rosie Monk. Rosie, a big topic for farmers at the moment is diversification. So, Rosie, what are your top tips for farmers who are diversifying, or indeed for those who have already diversified?
Yeah, so firstly, it's important to get your insurer involved early. So diversifying often means investing in new stock, equipment or buildings, and that could come with risks. So chatting with your insurance provider during the planning stage can help you understand what cover you'll need and avoid any surprises down the line. It's also worth checking your current farm insurance before launching anything new. Next, you want to make sure building work is properly insured. So if your plans involve construction work, make sure everything from tools to materials are covered before work begins. Whilst different parties may insure different parts of the project, it's important to get that confirmed in writing and really understand your needs.
And what about risk management advice?
So bringing people onto the farm through things like holiday lets or farm shops means safety becomes even more prominent. NFU Mutual Risk Management Services offers expert advice to all farms and businesses, not just our insurance customers. So it's a great resource to tap into.
And business interruption cover?
Yeah. So if something unexpected stops your new venture from running, business interruption insurance can help cover the lost earnings. For bigger setups like farm shops or commercial units, it can even help with temporary relocation costs or lost rental income. Just make sure to check your policy carefully so you know exactly what's covered.
Rosie, NFU Mutual offers insurance to farmers who are diversifying, yeah?
Yeah, that's correct. Depending on the type of diversification, NFU Mutual can offer insurance for both your farming and commercial activities, alongside other financial planning and risk management support. Our local agents are there to guide you right from the early planning stages. It's a good idea to talk to your agent as soon as you start thinking about diversifying. That way you'll get right advice from the start.
And Rosie, how can farmers get hold of NFU Mutual?
NFU Mutual have over 280 local agency offices across the UK, which means we are always close by. Whether you want to give them a call, send them an email, or pop in for a chat, your local office is there ready to help you. You can easily find their contact details by heading to nfumutual.co.uk.
Rosie Monk from NFU Mutual, this week's Farmers Weekly podcast partner. Thank you very much.
The Farmers Weekly podcast.
Now, growers and agronomists are being urged to exercise caution when using two key cereal fungicides together next spring. Laboratory work carried out by ADAS has found possible cross-resistance between the SDHI's Vimoy or Iblon and Miravis Plus. Plant pathologist Aoife O'Driscoll of NIAB says ideally the two products shouldn't be used together in the same spray programme. If they are, both chemistries should be protected by the addition of other modes of action, either in the tank or across the programme itself.
So the first piece of advice is there really is no need to panic or no need to start having a lot of concern about, oh, should I use these products or not? The two camps that people will be sitting in are the people who've already bought their chemistry already and the people who are considering buying their chemistry for 2026. So if you've got it in the shed already and you've decided that you're going to go for a Vimoy-based product at T1 and then followed by an Adepidin-based product at T2, and you've already bought into that. So the first piece of advice there would be to look at the dose rates that you're using. So we know that in these worst case scenarios, if you apply both of these products in a T1 and T2 program, and you apply them in as solos without any protection there, and you apply them at full dose rates, the situation that we found in the HTB work is not likely to occur, but could occur in the field. So first of all, we never use these products as solos. We always use them in mixtures or in co-forms, which is great, but really to look at adjusting the dose according to your situation. Do you really need to use full rates of these products in the situation that you're going to be dealing with in 2026? If you're in high septoria situations, consider using a multi-site with them, like Folpet if you're in a high septoria situation, or if you're in a high rust situation, consider using something like a tebuconazole in there, and basically just to protect those both SDHI molecules as much as you can with other partners in the mix, be it in the co-form that you're using or with other additional active ingredients in there. So that's the first camp. The second camp will be those who haven't already bought their products so far. And so if you're considering using Vimoy and Miravis in your programs, really consider it as maybe an either or situation. So one or the other would be the best scenario. You're completely legally allowed to use them both in a program. But consider, do you really need to do that? So we know that Vimoy-based products are really good in that T1 timing at cleaning up a lot of problems, especially with rust early in the season. And we know that Adepidin Miravis-based products are really good in high septoria situations for dealing with septoria in T2 scenarios. So you have to ask yourself, ideally, do you really need both? And if you don't need both, considering using something else at those timings. There's lots of options now in terms of fenpicoxamide based products, Revysol based products there. There are other options there. So the ideal situation is either or, but if you have to use both molecules because of either your own preference or what you already bought, considering trying to protect them with other actives or other chemistry in that tank mix to keep them safe. Because what we showed in the lab, it could happen in the field in the future. It's not going to happen in 2026 because we're working hard to protect those molecules, but it could happen. And so we just need to do the best possible in order to protect them.
Aoife O'Driscoll from NIAB. Sir Louise, two key fungicides against rust and septoria. No need to panic, but something to be aware of when using them together.
Yes, it is. It's an important development, or important to know about the development, certainly. And it is, if you like, an early warning. These newer SDHIs or new generation SDHIs, they are fantastic products. They offer very good disease control. They're a real level up from what we had before. They're very potent products, and we really don't want to lose them. We need to keep these in the armoury. But of course, this sort of standard monitoring work and testing that goes on on resistance and just how fungicides are or aren't performing, it has been established that these products do have the potential for cross-resistance. And by that, I mean that the use of one could drive resistance to the other. So these were, the work was done on Septoria, I should add, and the isolates that they used were collected from 5 UK sites. So they're all AHDB fungicide performance sites. And what they've shown from this is they've proved it in the lab, actually. So we now need to avoid it happening in the field.
So important to reiterate, Louise, that these two products are perfectly good in and of themselves when used individually, but you do need to be careful when using them both on the same crop, in the same field, in the same year, in other words, within the same spray programme.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You need to be aware of what they've discovered. You need to take advice and you need to use these products appropriately. So, as you rightly said, that probably will mean it's not such a good idea to use them in the same fungicide program. So, say one at T1 and the other at T2. But I think we also have to remember that these sorts of products are very seldom used on their own. They do tend to have other things mixed in with them. But luckily as well, there are loads of other options. So there's no need for a problem to develop. There are ways around this, and we need to just keep listening to the advice and doing what we're told to do when it comes to the use of them.
And remind us, Louise, of these two products again.
So this is Iblon, which is sold as Vimoy, and then it's also Adepidin, which is sold as Miravis Plus.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast. The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
You're listening to the Farmers Weekly Podcast. Welcome along wherever you're listening to us from. You can email us podcast@fwi.co.uk. And if you're in the UK itself, you can message us by texting the word farm, followed by your message to 88440. Louise, lots going on this week. We'll start with America. Some big news from Donald Trump.
Well, Donald Trump's been busy, hasn't he, where farming is concerned, or farming in America anyway. So first off, he's announced a $12 billion bailout for American farmers. So that's as a result of his tariffs and the trade wars and the fact that some of his farmers are struggling. So they're going to get a one-off payment and it's going to be in their bank accounts early next year. So that's his way of dealing with that chaos. And then he has also revealed that he's going to slash environmental rules on farm machinery companies. So that's going to help farmers and it will apparently lower the prices of their machinery. So there goes the agri-tech revolution. Goodness me.
Yes, all these political helpings going on, Johann, to improve profitability. Hey, would you report soon on improving profitability, aren't we? Which might be able to seriously improve margins. He's being quite forward-thinking there when he thinks that yes, just by slashing a few environmental regs for tractor manufacturers, suddenly the price of tractors is going to hit the floor. Good news though, from apparently the Midlands is no longer in drought. You have now had enough rain. So that is a good thing. Is there any other parts of the country that are no longer in drought? It's certainly very wet. Things feeling somewhat refreshed. There's also a story in the Telegraph this week. Giles Hurley, who is the chief exec or UK and Ireland, I think, CEO of Aldi, the supermarket, pretty much picking up on the mantra of many of the other retailers by saying, the whole inheritance tax thing on farm businesses is going to have an impact on food supply, is going to have an impact on food, the pricing of food. It certainly ain't going to get any cheaper if you carry along with that policy. But I think for me, and I don't know what you guys think, there's the wider context of support as well. So the IHT thing is one thing, but the whole support complex, the whole transition of our farming systems to something that's more resilient and can stand up to 42-degree heat, that is really important as well, because it's going to get more expensive if we carry on doing the same stuff anyway, and particularly if there's no support, people are just going to stop farming. I mean, we've seen the disaster in the drought-prone areas this summer that we saw across the country. It's just getting harder and harder to grow stuff.
You're absolutely right. And I think what's interested me about the retailers, and I actually can't remember a time when we have had the retailers really as one voice when it comes to supporting farming. And, they really are. They all claim to be, farming's biggest customer or whatever it is. And British farming's really important to them. But, they've come out with some very, very strong messages. And so I think that's a good thing. And I just hope the government is listening to them.
It is a good thing. And the thing is as well, I think the retailers realise as well, they've always been farming's biggest customer. And actually some of them genuinely have acknowledged that for many years, many decades. I know a lot of producers may not think that, but they realise that supply volume from the UK is key to their supply chains. But I think even more so now when they look at how perilous supply of product is elsewhere in the world, we absolutely need to double down and make this resilience thing happen. So, yeah, you're right. It is a good thing, and it's a unique thing that they're all sort of coming out as one.
From supermarket shelves to the quayside in Calais, where a £650,000 shipment of British lamb seized by France will now be allowed to return to the UK. It ends a 3-week standoff that left 4 lorry loads of British lamb carcasses stranded at the French border. The lamb was rejected by French officials, who reportedly found traces of wool on individual carcasses, despite them being stamped as fit for human consumption by meat inspectors in the UK on behalf of the Food Standards Agency. Phil Stocker of the National Sheep Association.
You're quite right. Those products, those carcasses would have been through inspection at this end, and they would have been signed off by FSA vets as being fit for human consumption and fit for export. And then when they get over to the other side of the channel, they've been found to not meet the standards that they require. And, there's a question about whether that's a heightened or overzealous inspection at that end, or whether it's slipping through at this end. But I think it's resulted in a number of things. I think DEFRA are, without doubt, talking to the French, the EU officials, and trying to resolve this so that it doesn't become an ongoing problem. And I think, we and others will have sent messages back out to our processors and the FSA to warn them, make them aware that those inspections are really tight. They may be tighter than they've been over recent months, but those inspections and signing off of products just need to be aware that those officials are tightening controls possibly.
So do you think it's a political decision then, or is it there might have been something in it?
Yeah, I think this has been going on for some time. We've been hearing of problems with lung damage for some time in plucks. We've been hearing problems more recently around liver damage through liver fluke. And again, they do seem to be picking out small specks that might well have got through in previous times. So is it political? I think it's worth just remembering that we're at the start of a reset of our trade relationships between the UK and the EU. Those negotiations are ongoing. It could be that it's part of that process that they want to set, if you like, a really strong framework and send some warning shots out. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a strong suspicion that it is political and is probably connected to those trade negotiations. We know now from this incident over this last week that things are very, very tight in terms of inspections and getting products in. And I think we need to do what we can in terms of discussions with the EU to avoid that problem escalating. But we also need to make sure that we're going through our inspection processes, doubly this end to try to avoid the problem. So it's a wake-up call for everyone, I would say.
That's Phil Stocker of the National Sheep Association. Hugh, lots going on here, lots to unpick.
Yeah, look, there's lots going on here, but I think that ultimately France and, as we know, Europe, biggest customer for lamb. We're the 4th biggest lamb exporter in the world, but over half the lamb that we produce, or about half the lamb we produce here, we export. And so our export market is hugely, hugely important. Those of you that have been involved with processing lambs will know that when you process a lamb, you might get a bit of wool stuck on it. When that lamb's warm and squidgy, and it's just, been processed, you might find it hard to see the bit of wool, tiny speck of wool on the lamb itself, particularly because the fat's still quite pale. And I can tell you this from personal experience. And then you come back in the fridge 12 hours later and it's all hardened up and set, and slightly change colour. And then you might then see a small piece of wool. So perhaps we need to just be a bit more diligent in terms of letting little specks of wool go on carcasses into lorries and across the channel. Equally, this won't be the first time it's happened. And I think the other thing to remember as well here, if we get what the current government wants, which is closer alignment, particularly of our phytosanitary stuff, the SPS stuff, then the people that are currently checking what is in effect a third party or a third country product coming into France from, in our case, England, those people's jobs might not be there after the SPS thing happens. So there's no longer a requirement. If that was the case, if the SPS thing happens, there will be no longer a requirement at the border post at Calais to actually inspect these things, because we'll all be back sort of aligned. So could it be that someone's making a point as to why they're there, or could it be that they're just frustrated because there's been a few too many specks of wool on carcasses? Either way, it's all, I think, resolved. We just need to make sure everyone's happy and keep this very valuable trade cracking on, because it is absolute lifeblood for many. Well, all of our sheep farmers would be hugely affected by any interruption to this. And also, it's a heck of an achievement, guys. Well done. We are a huge exporter of lamb. The people in the continent love our lamb. So let's do our best, make sure everyone in the supply chain does our best, and it keeps flowing seamlessly across the water.
Well, that's the latest on the lamb market, Hugh. What about the rest of the markets? What's going on?
Thank you very much, Johann. Finished at deadweight 661.2. That has come back about 1.4 pennies on the week. The live weight SQQ on the cattle is 372.3. So that is back, getting on for 12 pence on the week. Sheep prices, deadweight SQQ this week firms up 713.5. That's gone up 3p. The live weight 316.7. That's dropped back about 9 pennies on the week. The pig price, I'm afraid, eases again this week, 198.5, back from 199.8 last week. On to the arable markets, and after the amazing, 450 odd quid barley quote last week, well, it's gone back to normal. But let's start with feed wheat, 164.50 for a tonne of feed wheat this week on the spot. That's dropped back exactly £2 on the week. Milling wheat's 179 dead. That's actually gone up just over £1.50 a tonne. Feed barley. Now, last week, I think we quoted it as something like 485 or whatever it was. It was a typo, a printing error. It should have been last week, £150.80. And this week, I'm afraid it's dropped back. It's gone back about to a quid or so to 140, just over £1, actually £1.80 to £149. So weakening in the barley market. Oilseed rate 405.9. That's gone back again, I'm afraid, by about 8 or 9 quid. Feed peas stand on at 213. Feed beans 204.4, back just under a penny. The diesel price, the good news is that's all pretty depressing on the arable front, isn't it? It continues to be. But the good news is that the diesel's getting cheaper. I paid not as much as this, actually, through my farm co-op this week when I bought diesel. So this week's diesel quoted price, 69.42, back from last week's quoted price of 71.5. But here's a thought. It's not actually as cheap as this time last year when it was 68 dead on the diesel. But it does seem to be easing. So perhaps filling up all your tanks over Christmas could be the thing to do before it gets busy again next year, if indeed it does.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast. The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
And finally, the Red Tractor Farm Assurance Scheme has announced a review of its farm standards, promising to strip out unnecessary audit requirements and streamline assessments. It's being billed as a response to the Farm Assurance Review amid mounting farmer frustration over red tape, lack of transparency and rising compliance costs. I asked Red Tractor Director of Operations Philippa Wiltshire how it would make inspections easier for farmers.
So yes, I mean, the how is a very good question. And as we've announced this week, the sector priorities and objectives, the work of our technical advisory committees will be very much to answer that how question. What they'll be doing is they'll be asking themselves right down to the nitty-gritty detail of each individual standard. Is this standard needed? Why is it needed? We have a really clear commitment to be very clear at the end of this, to justify and give reasons for each individual standard. And then what they'll also be asking is, how can that verification of compliance be demonstrated? And really thinking outside the box around, traditionally, that's always been over the last 25 years with an assessor walking down the drive, walking around the farm and seeing things physically there. But actually, are there lots of different ways in which that can be verified? So with an aim of reducing audit burden, streamlining assessments, and allowing farmers to continue to do what they do well, which is get on with farming.
No one likes unnecessary red tape, Philippa. Can you give an example of how assessments might be streamlined?
Yes, no, certainly. You're absolutely right. We know that farmers don't like paperwork. They want to get on with the actual practicalities of farming. So although I can't give you all of the answers now, because obviously the technical advisory committees have to do that work, streamlined assessments, we believe, will be delivered in part through the standards review. So an example I can give you there is that, for 20 years, we've had a standard that's required farmers to have an emergency plan. That's a record of all the emergency contact numbers that not just the farmer but any staff on the farm need to be aware of. But nowadays, in a modern farming and life, everybody's got mobile phones. We need to make sure that our standards reflect modern day farming. So actually, do we even need that emergency plan now? So that's an example of where that could help to streamline the assessment, even just the standard process. Another example that a number of the sectors have announced as part of their priorities is to really look at also the type of assessment that takes place. Do we always need to see absolutely everything every time, or can we take a much more risk-based approach, rewarding those higher performers with perhaps a visit that doesn't look at everything, and particularly doesn't always look at the records, particularly if those records are available through digital and technology formats.
There's some suggestion that farmers could be allowed to take and submit geotagged photos rather than keeping a written record, in some cases at least.
Yes, absolutely. So Red Tractor has a portal that is already available to our members now, again, with a view to trying to streamline and reduce the audit burden. That portal means that farmers can upload copies of records and policies that the assessor can see in advance of the assessment, rather than spending time while they're on the farm looking at those records. We are very much committed to enhancing that portal and how it can help farmers. One of the things that we're looking at is actually, rather than writing a record of whenever they've done something, and that's a due diligence requirement that they need to be able to demonstrate they've done something, could actually they upload a photo of a record that they've done it. So, for example, every time they get the grain store ready prior to harvest and it's clean, rather than just put that on a record, take a photo, upload it to the portal. It would be date stamped, and that would be the evidence that they need. And I'm very much, that won't need the standards review for us to develop that. That is very much in progress, and we should be announcing that early next year.
So this is about working smarter rather than harder and a more collaborative and transparent approach.
Yes, throughout this whole process, and very much our focus has been, particularly over the last 18 months, to work as collaboratively as possible. We do that through our sector boards and our technical advisory committees. We've got more than 150 representatives from farmers, the supply chain, right the way through to customers that sit on all of those sector boards. And we will continue to do all of this collaboratively. It's really important that everybody has a voice in that process. From a transparency perspective, we have, over the last 12 months, strived to demonstrate transparency in the way in which we work, and the way we've responded to the farm assurance review with updates every 2 months transparently, we will continue to do. So next year, farmers while we go through this review process of standards, can expect to see regular updates from Red Tractor and regular opportunities to feedback. So what we've announced this week is a good example of that, where we've announced our priorities, but we've also given stakeholders and farmers an opportunity to feed back on what they think. And we are absolutely committed to continuing to do that.
Not about weakening the standards then. The standards are still very much there, but the assessments are going to be made more workable for farmers.
Absolutely, and that's vitally important. This is about delivering efficiency whilst maintaining rigour. It's vital that the standards continue to deliver value for everyone in the supply chain, including farmers, and remaining relevant to those farming sectors they serve. So we have got to continue to get that balance right.
And just to be clear, no return of the Greener Farms commitment. This idea, controversial idea with many farmers, that farmers will have to carbon footprint their farms. That is still off the table.
Absolutely. That was over 2 years ago now. At the time we announced it would not progress. That continues to be the case. We, as ever, stand ready to support the individual sectors in any areas that they feel Red Tractor can support. And I think the priorities that we've announced by sector show where each sector wishes Red Tractor to support it.
That's Philippa Wiltshire from Red Tractor. And if you'd like to get involved with this Red Tractor Farm Assurance Review, simply visit redtractor.org.uk/improvements. Louise, if this works, it is going to be music to the ears of many farmers.
Well, yes, it is. But haven't we heard all this before? I mean, did they really set out what differences farmers are going to see when they have their audits? And remember, my arable farmers have been particularly unhappy with the way that things have unfolded in the last few years. Hugh, maybe you know a bit more about this and can explain what difference people are going to see.
Well, I probably don't know any more than you, Louise, other than to say that, yes, we've been... there's a lot of talk, isn't it? It's a lot more talk, I'm afraid. Yeah, I mean, there's so much you could do. We've said this a million times before on this very podcast. There is so much you could do. It sounds facetious to make assurance fun. No, to actually make assurance useful, so it delivers useful KPIs back to your business, so that you can do it effortlessly, seamlessly during your day, doing what you do day to day. It gathers the data and then boom, you hit the button and the tech assures you at the end of the year or at the end of the period. It's just been really slow coming. Look, this is great that they've acknowledged it. It's all been sort of set out. They've talked about stuff, but actually we need some action on the ground and not just talk. And this constant, we're doing stuff for farmers with farmers take, and that's great that they've got out there and spoke to people, but we just need some action. That's what the industry wants. We want some action. We want assurance. Those of us that need it, we want it. We just want it to be slick, quick and slick and dirty, and just get on with it. And easy to deliver. And all the tech's there, and loads of other places in the world are using, apps on phones and doing things smartly and gathering data. It's just joining the dots. Just get on with it, basically.
Hugh, whenever I hear about the Red Tractor portal, and it was mentioned in the audio by Philippa, I get the impression that Red Tractor sees its portal as being some kind of cyber gateway to Red Tractor heaven.
It's the portal. Yes, it's like something out of Star Trek. No, look, they do. And I think there's a lot of work being done to try and develop it. And I get that it's not something you can do really quickly. And there's a lot of stuff, linked into this, and you've got to take everyone steadily. One could argue at times that we take everyone a bit too steadily. I suppose when they tried to take them fast through the environmental thing, it all blew up in their face. But equally, stuff like this, yeah, you could just move on, and the tech is there to do it. The Red Tractor portal, as it stands, as we know, my personal view is it's not that useful, because you have to double hand, and none of the auditing, none of the certification bodies that come to your farm, like NSF, they have to take, if you put it on the portal, as I understand it, strike me down if I'm wrong, they have to download it off the portal and put it onto their portal because they use a different portal. So it's all about joining the portals. So there's all that to sort out. But yeah, potentially you could do it. In the press briefing, there was an example used of an emergency contact sheet. And perhaps this is one of the things that we could take out of the audit because people will no longer need it because they could have it all on their phone. But and the TACs have talked about this, but I didn't strike me as a good example because the whole point of an emergency contact sheet on the wall in your yard is if someone who isn't you or one of your employees comes across some disaster happening on your farm, they can see on there who to call, the number instantly, and hopefully head it off at the pass. So yeah, it just needs some energy and the vision is sort of there. It just needs some dynamism. Let's get out there and get it moving because actually it could be really good. But at the moment, nothing's happening too quickly. But hey, at least they've made the commitment to do that. The idea that you could have less audits, I don't think people mind an annual audit. I think that's probably we've probably spent too much time for some of us, for beef farmers that get an audit every 18 months. Personally, I don't think that's onerous. I get for dairy farmers who have to have Red Tractor round, and then they have Arla round, and then they have the supermarket round, and then they have someone else round. Yeah, that's dumb. That just needs merging into one. Totally, that needs sorting out. So there's loads to do here. Let's just get on and get it delivered quickly because we've been through the whole psychodrama of talking about assurance. It's getting really dull. We just want it to work hard and fast for us, add value, add integrity, keep all our customers happy so we can just carry on farming. Job done.
Hugh, Louise, thank you. That website address again, it's redtractor.org.uk/improvements. Do get involved with the review and help shape the future, as it were. And that is about it for this episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast. We do hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. If you have, please do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you've really enjoyed what you've heard, please, as always, do leave us a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with all the latest news, views and analysis of all the big stories affecting UK agriculture. But for now, until next week, I'm Johann.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh Broom.
Thank you for listening. This episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast was brought to you with NFU Mutual, offering you tailored farming insurance and a local personal service.